Desmond Watson, to do what he did at that weight was actually insane. They are not allowing him to practice until he loses more weight.
Tampa Bay Buccaneers are waiving defensive tackle Desmond Watson.
Picture this. You're standing at 6'6". You just benched 225 pounds 36 times, more than anyone at the NFL Combine that year, and you've never missed a single college game in 4 years. You should be a lock for the NFL draft, right? Wrong, because there's one number that's about to ruin everything. 464. That's how many pounds Desmond Watson weighed at his pro day. And before this story is over, that weight is going to cost him millions of dollars and his NFL dream. Not because he couldn't play, but because he literally couldn't stop eating. This is the story of how Desmond Watson became the heaviest player in NFL history to sign a contract, and then somehow managed to eat his way right back out of the league before ever playing a single snap. So before we get to this content, we have a brief announcement. NFL season's around the corner, and Dak Prescott just needs one passing yard in order for his square to hit. Guys, you can sign up with my promo code Mikerophone to get a free $50 in lineups when you play $5 or more on Prize Picks. Once you get that, use $25 on this lineup here to make $131. I've already been making picks so I can snipe the best lines early on. And in this case, I'm pairing Dak Prescott to get one passing yard, which is a free square, with Kyren Williams getting a touchdown at any point and Justin Jefferson scoring a touchdown versus the Chicago Bears. On top of that, if you want more plays, I've created an incredible Discord community of experts in the WAP link in the description down below. And thank you, Prize Picks, for today's sponsor. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? Let's rewind to 2021. Desmond Watson, or Big Dez as they called him, was arriving at the University of Florida as one of the most intriguing defensive line prospects in the country. Coming out of Armwood High School in Sefner, Florida, just 20 minutes away from Tampa, Watson was already a local legend. The scouting reports described him as having the looks of the ideal nose tackle for the 3-4 defense, with surprisingly light feet given his build. But here's where things would get interesting. When Watson arrived at Florida, he weighed 385 pounds. That's already massive, but remember that number because we're going on a journey here. During his freshman year in 2021, Watson showed flashes of what made him special. Despite being a rookie, he appeared in 7 games and started picking up the system. But something else was picking up too, his weight. By his sophomore year in 2022, Watson had already ballooned to 415 pounds. For those of you guys that don't want to do the advanced calculus, that's a 30-pound gain in 1 year. Now, here's the crazy part. The weight didn't stop him from producing. In 2022, Watson became a starter, appearing in 13 games with 10 starts, recording 25 tackles and 1.5 tackles for a loss. He even had this insane viral moment where he stripped the ball from South Carolina's quarterback Spencer Rattler while literally stiff-arming him at the same time. Dude was playing like a creative player with all the sliders maxed out, but the weight kept climbing. By his junior year in 2023, Watson hit 435 pounds, then 449 pounds entering his senior year. The coaching staff at Florida tried everything: nutritionists, special workout programs, you name it. Watson would lose weight during the offseason, then gain it all back and then some during the season. Bro was on a perennial bulk. He later admitted that there are times where I do basically starving and stuff like that, and I would drop weight, of course, but I didn't feel confident that way. I didn't feel strong and I didn't feel fast. Here's what's wild though. Through all 4 years at Florida, Watson never missed a single game, not one. He played in 51 straight games, finishing his college career with 63 tackles, 4 tackles for a loss, 1.5 sacks, a forced fumble, and a fumble recovery. In his final game, the 2024 Gasparilla Bowl, Watson literally carried the ball for a 1-yard first down. Imagine being the defender trying to tackle a 450-pound man running at you, and then later on he would hold Tulane's quarterback in the air on 3rd down until the refs had to blow the play dead because Watson just wouldn't put him down. Now we get to March 2025 and it's Florida's Pro Day. This is where NFL scouts come to evaluate players who weren't invited to the combine. Watson steps on the scale, 464 pounds. Let me put that number into perspective for you. The previous heaviest player in NFL history to actually play in a game was Aaron Gibson at 410 pounds. William the Refrigerator Perry Perry, who was considered massive in his era, topped out at 382 pounds. Watson was 54 pounds heavier than the previous record holder. He wasn't just big, he was historically and unprecedentedly massive. But here's where it gets interesting. Watson wasn't just some immobile blob. At that pro day weighing at 464 pounds, Watson benched 225 pounds 36 times. That was more than any player who was actually invited to the NFL Combine that year. He ran the 40-yard dash in 5.93 seconds and had a 25-inch vertical jump. For comparison, that's about the same 40 time as some linebackers who weigh 200 pounds less than him. NFL draft analyst Lance Zierlein wrote about Watson that Watson can gather and occupy double teams without losing his gap and is strong enough to shed single blocks fairly quickly. However, managing his weight will have to be a priority for the team that adds him. The last line, that's what we call foreshadowing, folks. So the 2025 NFL draft comes and goes. 7 rounds, 257 picks. Shedeur Sanders gets picked in the 5th round. I don't know if you guys heard. And Desmond Watson's name is never called. Teams were interested in his talent, but that 464-pound number was just too much of a risk. One scout told reporters that Watson was a boom or bust selection who brings physical tools that simply don't exist elsewhere. But then something amazing happens. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, his hometown team, the team he grew up watching just 20 minutes from his house. They sign him as an undrafted free agent, and they don't just sign him for nothing. They give him a $20,000 signing bonus and guarantee $50,000 of his contract. For those of you guys that just watched my Shiloh Sanders video, who ironically was cut by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you'd understand that's serious money for an undrafted guy, which tells you that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers actually believed in him. Watson was living his dream. He told reporters that my life feels like a movie. You couldn't write the script where a person goes from little league to high school to college to the pros without having to move out of the state. One of the coaches was messing with me the other day because I've never seen snow. Better yet, he was going to learn from Vita Vea, the Bucs' 2-time Pro Bowl nose tackle who's listed at 347 pounds. Though, let's be real, Vea is probably closer to 360. Watson said that being in a position to have somebody you look up to and model your game after, be a leader and vet at your position group, I feel like I'm blessed. By late April, about a month after signing, reports came out that Watson had dropped to 437 pounds. His high school coach confirmed that he lost 27 pounds in just over 4 weeks. Things were looking up. He was trending in the right direction. During OTAs and minicamp, Watson was participating, learning the system, bonding with teammates. There's this video that went viral where Watson moved a golf court with absolute ease while his teammate Shiloh Sanders, yeah, Deion's son, could barely budget. Teammates were in awe of his strength. ESPN predicted that Watson would make the 53-man roster, writing in July that their plans for him are very general at this point. Get him to a healthy playing weight and ensure he can stay there before carving out any type of role. But then training camp opened on July 23, 2025, and everything changed. The Buccaneers placed Watson on the non-football injury illness list, not because he was hurt, not because he was sick, but because he had failed to meet his weight loss goals. Head coach Todd Bowles tried to be diplomatic about it, saying that it's just about trying to get him better, to be a healthier player and getting him on the field a little bit more. The Buccaneers had given Watson specific weight milestones he needed to hit. We don't know the exact numbers, but reports suggested that he was still around 449 to 450 pounds when camp started, meaning that he'd actually gained back some of the weight that he'd lost. Here's where it gets brutal. Being on the NFI list meant that Watson couldn't practice with the team. He couldn't play in preseason games. He was basically in limbo, still technically on the team, but not really part of it. And here's the kicker. Players on the NFI list don't get paid. The Buccaneers could choose to pay him out of goodwill, but they weren't obligated to. General Manager Jason Licht said on August 6th that Watson had some serious milestones to reach before he could practice, and that the team wanted him to focus entirely on his weight and conditioning. Watson was given a team nutritionist and special trainers. He was still around the facility, attending meetings, learning plays, but he wasn't on the field. The first preseason game came and went. Watson would just watch from the sideline in street clothes. His second preseason game was the same thing. By the third and final preseason game on August 23rd, Watson was still on the NFI list, still in street clothes, still watching. He had been with the team for 4 months and hadn't taken a single practice snap. On August 19th, Coach Bowles sounded optimistic for the first time, saying he wanted to get a plan in place for Watson by the end of the week and would have loved to get him on the field sooner rather than later, but that optimism was apparently misplaced. On August 25th, 2025, cutdown day, NFL teams have to trim their rosters from 90 players to 53. The Buccaneers had 3 options with Watson: put him on the 53-man roster, shift him to reserve NFI, which would keep his rights but not count against the roster, or release him entirely, and they chose option 3. Fox Sports reporter Greg Allman broke the news. Bucs are waiving rookie defensive tackle Desmond Watson, who had been on the non-football illness list all of training camp. He had to get his weight down. What makes this even more brutal is that the Buccaneers could have kept him on reserve NFI. They could have continued working with him on his conditioning, retained his rights, and brought him back later in the season if he hit his weight goals. But they didn't. They cut him completely. They gave up on him. Think about what this means. Watson went from being the strongest player at Pro Day, from having ESPN predict he'd make the roster, from getting a $50,000 guaranteed contract from his hometown team, to being cut without ever putting on pads for a single practice. He literally ate his way out of the NFL. And here's the thing that really gets me. This wasn't about talent. The Steelers Depot's scouting report said that Watson could have had a career arc similar to Terrence Cody, who was a second-round pick despite weighing 354 pounds. NFL Network draft analysts said that Watson had Pro Bowl caliber talent off of the edge. This was about one thing: Watson just couldn't control his weight. In his own words from before the draft, "I feel like right now is the best I felt with the process of losing weight. The problem was his best wasn't good enough." To put this into perspective, do you remember Aaron Gibson, the previous heaviest player at 410 pounds? He actually played in 38 NFL games across 6 seasons. Nate Newton weighed 401 pounds and won 3 Super Bowls with the Dallas Cowboys. Wow, that seems like ages ago, huh? Even William the Refrigerator Perry at 382 pounds had a 10-year career and scored a touchdown in the Super Bowl. But Watson, 0 games, 0 snaps, 0 plays. He became the heaviest player in NFL history to sign a contract and possibly the only player ever to be cut exclusively for being too heavy without ever getting a chance to prove himself on the field. After his release, Watson's agent kept quiet. There's been no word about other teams showing interest. No practice squad invitations, no arena league offers. The man who never missed a college game, who bench pressed more than anyone at the combine, who had his hometown crowd behind him, was out of football at 22 years old. But do you know what the saddest part is? In college, Watson had said, "It's a good story, but I don't want that to be my narrative. I want to be known as a football player, and a good football player at that." Instead, he became exactly what he didn't want to be: a cautionary tale, a what-if story, the guy who was too heavy for the NFL. Look, I'm not here to fat shame anybody. Watson's weight issues clearly went beyond just eating too much. This was a guy who talked about starving himself and still gaining weight, who worked with nutritionists and trainers but just couldn't keep the pounds off. There's likely a medical or psychological factors at play here that we just don't know about. But the NFL is a business, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers made a business decision. They saw a player who, despite 4 months of professional training and nutritional support, couldn't meet the basic physical requirements that they set. They saw a liability, not an asset. The wildest thing is, if Watson had been born 40 years earlier, he might have been a star. The game was different back then. Teams wanted massive immovable objects on the defensive line. But today's NFL is about speed, stamina, and versatility. You need to be able to play 60 to 70 snaps a game, rush the passer, drop into coverage occasionally, and at 464 pounds or even 450 pounds, Watson couldn't do that. Here's one final comparison that really drives this home. The same day the Buccaneers signed Watson at 464 pounds, they drafted Tez Johnson in the 7th round. Johnson is 5'11" and weighs 154 pounds, the lightest player in the NFL. The Bucs had both the heaviest and lightest players in the league. Guess which one made the roster? Watson's story is unique in NFL history. Players have been cut for being out of shape before. Players have been fined for being overweight. Hell, Aaron Gibson was once fined $80,000 for showing up to camp overweight. But Watson might be the only player ever whose NFL career ended before it began purely literally because he couldn't put down the fork. As of right now, late August 2025, Desmond Watson is a free agent. No team has claimed him off of waivers. No practice squad has been called. The man who could have been the heaviest player to ever play in an NFL game instead became the heaviest player to never play in a game. Maybe Watson will get his weight under control and make a comeback. Maybe some team will take a chance on him if he can drop to 400 pounds or below. Aaron Gibson eventually got down to 290 pounds after retirement and completely transformed his body, so it's possible. But for now, Desmond Watson's NFL story ends where it began, with a number on a scale. 464 pounds got him into headlines, 450 pounds got him cut, and somewhere in between those numbers was an NFL career that never was. And this isn't the only controversial Tampa Bay Buccaneers cut that we have today. If you guys didn't hear, Shiloh Sanders got cut for literally attacking a man in the middle of a preseason game. We have a completely separate video on that. I'm going to leave it in the end screen and meet you guys there. I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.